Good morning, friends. It's like a Friday. It's Thursday, but no work on Friday for me, so it's like one. You ever heard of this? The Washington Generals? I can't even read it there. It says they've lost some number, 12 or 13,000 games. Washington Generals got beat all the time by the Harlem Globetrotters. I think they won one game by accident or something like that, but I love the Washington Generals. They are the lonesome losers. They didn't just have a bad day, they had a lot of bad days. So that's the Washington Generals. I was thinking about today, I was thinking about a bad day. You guys ever have a bad day? I do. I had a bad day Monday. I don't want to give you the details, but it wasn't my best day. It wasn't my shining moment. But a bad day to me is when I let the thoughts activate my emotions and let speculations run amok in my head. So speculations are those thoughts that hit you that just aren't true, but you let them go to the next place, to the next place, and then the next place, and then you have, I think Zig Ziglar called it stinking thinking at that point in time. And Monday was one of those days for me. I just couldn't get it together, and I was ready to just put my head in the pillow at the end of the day. Um, but at the end of the day, I chose to think differently as I was going about my day. I just let those bad thoughts go otherwise. So, but I was thinking about one of Jesus's bad days, and the irony of Jesus is he had the same bad thoughts that we process, but he always processed them properly. And then if you go to Matthew 26:36, this is the bad day that I think about. I just don't even quite grasp what happened there. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane. We're getting ready for all the Easter week stuff that we're talking about on a normal Easter week. And he said, Then Jesus came to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, Sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and distressed. Sounds like a bad day, doesn't it? Then he said to them, My soul, we talked about what our soul is my mind, will, and emotion, is deeply grieved. Grieved is an emotion, to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me. And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, You men cannot keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's a bad day when you let the flesh dictate what's going to happen in your world. You skip down a little bit lower. So he's definitely grieved. In one of the writings, I can't remember who it was, that he sweat drops of blood. That's a pretty rough day right there. Then at 26:50 through 52, this process happened multiple times. In 50 through 52, he says, and Jesus said to him, Friend, this is when Judas was bringing all the people to take him away. And so Jesus says to Judas, Friend, do what you have come for. Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus reached and drew out his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. Can you imagine Peter? Whack! And so he cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, Peter, put your sword back in its place, for all those who take up the sword shall surely perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will put at my disposal more than 12,000 angels? Then Jesus fixed the guy's ear. He just picked it up and put it back on. Imagine that. So then, if you flip over to John real quick, John 18, verses 5 and 6. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all tell the story of the Garden of Gethsemane. They're all telling the story of Jesus. They're just giving it from their vantage point. But John always has a little different spin on it. So on John 18, 5 and 6, it says, again, this was when Judas brought him there. And all these people came, and Jesus said, when they came to him, Whom do you seek? And they answered, Jesus the Nazarene. And Jesus said, I am he. And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with them. So when he had said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Remember yesterday, or one of the days this week, I was talking about the great I am? These guys came to get Jesus, and he says, I am he. Boom, they fall over to the ground. They get back up and decide to take him anyway. Jesus put the guy's ear back on. These guys fell to the ground, and they didn't recognize that he was God. They saw this, and they didn't recognize he was God. So I ask you, did Jesus have a bad day, or did those guys have a bad day? And what gives me great hope in this section of Scripture is in Hebrews 4:15. Hebrews 4:15, it says, we have a high priest who's been tempted in all things like we are, yet without sin. So that day in Gethsemane, that night in Gethsemane, there's no sign of a present temptation, like something right there with him. Something internal was stirring inside of Jesus, causing temptation to him. And all of us have that internal temptation going on, and Jesus did it without sin. So the bad day wasn't Jesus's, because he was relying on the Father the whole time. And that's what we do to get over a bad day, is to rely on the Father, the Son, and the Spirit living in us, because we have a comforter there. And I just trust that you don't have too many of those bad days where you let the thoughts run amok, but you can trust Jesus in those. But when you do, you've got a comforter. Have a great day and a great weekend.